Okay, Chair Noel.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting to order on March the 23rd, and the time right now is 9:02 a.m. Welcome, everyone. We're finally in spring, although it doesn't really look or feel like it outside yet. Um, so that having been said, I wonder if we could please have a mover and a seconder to approve today's agenda. Michelle moves and Fern seconds. Thank you. Any comments or questions about the agenda? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that carries. Thank you. Um, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare today by any of the members? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Hopefully, everyone has had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes from January 26th. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, to adopt those minutes as circulated? Sue moves and Michelle is seconding that motion. Are there any comments or questions about those minutes? Okay, then I'll call the question. All in favor of adopting those minutes as circulated? And that also carries. Thank you. Um, and now I have the pleasure of welcoming Sarah Merkel from Huron Perth Public Health for our delegation today regarding site planning and built environment. And I will turn it over to you, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm super happy to be here. My name is Sarah Merkel. I am a public health promoter with Huron Perth Public Health. I sit on our previous chronic disease team, so it's the health promotion and well-being team. And I thought I would go through little bits of my job that might be of interest to this committee, just so you know that I exist. And I've kind of suggested throughout my presentation some opportunities of how we could work together in the future. So I'm going to share my screen here. And hopefully you can see my presentation. Okay, great. And just to let you know, I have already presented this presentation to Perth District or Perth Accessibility Advisory Committee back in the fall, and as well as Stratford's committee a couple months ago. So yours is the last group on my list to be able to see. And I'm trying to move my screen here. There we go. So I can see my notes. So at HPPH, we obviously are following the AODA for workplaces. We already have an anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion committee with a lens to develop and look at policies and our procedures under that lens. We also have an internal ad hoc accessibility advisory committee that more looks at our spaces. And then I am primarily the person with the built environment portfolio where most of our community accessibility work is completed. So one of the pieces of my portfolio is our municipal liaison program. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to tell you a little bit more about that. So we have 17 municipalities in Perth and Huron County. And I am the municipal liaison to Stratford, St. Mary's, Perth South, Perth County, Huron County, and Godrich. And there's 5 of us across the health unit who are liaisons to the 17 municipalities. And some of our responsibilities include monitoring municipal agendas and minutes. We participate in alignment meetings. So what that means is once a year to once every 2 years, depending how big or small the municipality township is, we would meet with staff at that municipality to be able to understand what their citizens are passionate about, what if there's any opportunities for collaboration opportunities in the future, and just to get a general how's it going? How can we work together more? So those have been quite successful, and we will continue working through those as the years go on. Um, Also, I feel like our responsibilities include kind of being connectors of ideas, programs, and people. So the cool benefit of um, being able to work with many municipalities is that we see really awesome programs. And to give you an example, so I had met with Perth Accessibility Advisory Committee back in the fall. And after my presentation, they said, "Hey, Sarah, we are trying to figure out if there's any mats that we could use for a playground to be able to put down so that someone could go on their wheelchair and get to the playground easily because we don't have a paved path at this point." And I said, "Actually, I remember Michaela from Goderich and Huron is able to provide some feedback on that." So I think it was like literally within an hour, I was able to connect Michaela with the staff person at Perth, and they were able to have a great little knowledge exchange. And then that was able to help over in Perth County. So it is really neat to be able to be that connector of ideas and programs. And Michaela was great to like, here's the company, here's around the cost, and that was really helpful. So I thought that's pretty neat. Something neat that happened more recently when I was monitoring municipal communications in Stratford. So I had noticed that a grant application was taking place for Rick Hansen's Foundation's Barrier Bus Grant Program for a bandshell viewing area project. So I was able to reach out to the clerk and say, "Hey, I see you need a letter of support. I'm happily able to write one for you." And then was able to send that over for the grant application. So if your group ever is writing a grant and need a letter of support, please keep me in mind. I'm always happy and willing to write that letter of support for your projects. And then the other thing I wanted to say was when I was monitoring agendas recently, I came across the Access SLED program put on by this group here. And so I set up a meeting to learn more about that and that a great initiative so that I could possibly share that program with Stratford and Perth, because that might also be something that they'd be interested in pursuing. So had a great meeting on Friday, learning more about Access SLED. So it's just neat to be able to connect those ideas and programs across the different regions. So jumping a little bit more into the built environment. So when I look at an official plan, I look generally at feedback for 5 themes. So I'm looking at growth management and land use planning. I'm looking at social connection and well-being. I'm looking at the environment, green space, and UV. I look at housing, transportation, and connectivity. And in the past couple of years, I've reviewed Perth, South Huron, Huron, Central Huron, Blue Water, and will be reviewing Stratford's official plan. And so it's something where it's been a big learning curve for me, but it's something where I feel like it's very important that healthy language gets put into these very large planning documents. Um, and so just to give you an example of what's something I might add into that. So for this one here, this was one, I believe it's for Blue Water. And so I said the suggestion below that were accepted both into South Huron's plan may also fit into a different, oh, this is Central Huron's, fit into a different section for Central Huron. And so for here, I added the stuff that's in the underline. So I said, sidewalks and multi-use trails and pathways, or maybe they want to create walkable, bike-friendly, and accessible neighborhoods where people can live, learn, work, and play, such as sidewalks and multi-use trails and pathways could also be added in. And they did include that second sentence into there. So I think, in those big policy documents, it's important that that language and those examples get put in. So that is official plans. And now I'm going to kind of switch over into the site plan subdivision plan committee or site plan commenting. So I started just doing this about a year ago in January, and I started out with North Perth. And so they were very gracious to help me along my learning journey of how to do so and what comments are helpful, what comments are not helpful. And I'm very fortunate for the planner and the chief building official and the engineer at North Perth to sort of help me continue building my skill set in this. And so I started commenting on these plans a year ago. I started with North Perth, then Stratford. I now am able to comment on all of Huron counties for things that make sense for public health, and also St. Mary's recently I've been added on to. And so I'm working on a standardized checklist, and I gather that lots of accessibility advisory committees sort of have these standardized checklists as to how they would review these site plans, which I think is awesome. And so generally when I am commenting, I'm usually commenting on things where it's a multi-unit dwelling, whether it's apartment buildings, complex or triplexes, condos, those sorts of things where lots of people are living in the same place. I'm looking at subdivisions generally, and then I'm also looking at some commercial, depending on if there's lots of people that are going to be going in and out of that property, whether it's people who work there or people who are going, if it's a business, people going in and out. So I'm selective in sort of how I can comment on those things. I've definitely gathered that when more than one commenting agency makes the same recommendation, particularly at the pre-con siltation phase, that the developer can be more inclined to change if suggested at that early phase. And I will say that I've felt fairly successful in the comments that I've made, even though all of my comments are advisory, and I always note that to the developer at the time when I'm reviewing those site plans. So I thought it might be helpful to give you a general sense of the types of things that I am commenting on. So I always look at it through an active transportation lens. So I'm always looking at, is there outdoor bike parking? I'm whether it's a multi-unit dwelling, if it's near commercial spaces, I'm always looking at that. And then I'm always looking at if there's opportunities for multi-use trails or pathways to connect into pre-existing infrastructure. So if there's a trail nearby, or maybe it's a busy local road, is there an opportunity for a multi-use trail or pathway to go in? That's very specific in terms of who I would what I would recommend. I look at common amenity areas, especially when it comes to multi-unit dwellings and you have lots of people who are going to be living in the same place. And I look at spaces that are going to promote social connections. So is there an opportunity for community garden? Or is there an opportunity for informal gathering spaces with picnic tables, shade, and an accessible path to get to that area? Just last week, I was reviewing a site plan for North Perth, and in that site plan, they had done a great job of creating a small common amenity space at the back of this facility. But the one thing that they were missing was an actual pathway that got from the back of the building to the gazebo area where they're going to have picnic tables and or chairs and tables. And so that small suggestion, they were like, oh my gosh, of course, we definitely need that. There's going to be more seniors and more people with mobility aids in this building. And we need to ensure that they are able to get to this space safely and easily. So that was a very small feedback that the developer was happy to be able to add that in to their plan. So that was a nice, easy win. Moving on, so site connectivity and accessibility. So I'm always looking at location of accessible parking. I'm not an expert at it, and I realize that there's lots of rules already around this, but I am definitely looking at, does it make sense where they have it? I'm also looking at pedestrian connectivity, and I will preference that I have 4 kids between the ages of 3 and 9, and I have spent many years up until last summer pushing a double stroller around and still continue to bring our wagon a lot of places depending on the occasion. So when I review a plan, I picture interacting with that space with my double stroller. And I know firsthand the importance of proper connection and curb cuts. So whenever I review that plan, I'm looking for curb cuts and connectivity to make it easier for anyone who wants to access that space. So I am looking at curb cuts. I'm looking at the location of community mailboxes. And then I'm also looking at sidewalk connections as well. So in this site plan, you can notice that there is a mailbox here and there's bike racks, which is great, but I'm not quite sure if this here is a sidewalk. I don't see any curb cuts here. So I've made the recommendation to say this feels slightly out of place, at least the mailbox to me. Is there an opportunity for it to go on the actual sidewalk, which is across the street, as more people will be able to easily access this? And also, I noted, please note where your curb cuts are. Please note where your sidewalk is. So I made that feedback and they can take it or leave it in terms of how they proceed next. And then the only other thing I wanted to talk to you about is that I also do park and trail audits. So I look at the location of accessible parking. I have a kind of a lovely standardized checklist that I go to and review parks and trails with. And then I write up a report and I will send it back to whoever at the municipality that sort of said I'm able to go and do that. So recently I did it in town of Goderich. I was able to provide it to the community services department. And then I also passed it over to tourism. And then I also shared it with Jessica Clapp, and I think she's got some men or environmental services. So she was interested because she was applying for a tree planting grant. And this was a perfect opportunity because I also talk a lot about shade in these audits. So it's neat because it gives some helpful feedback with pictures and actual locations back to those places. So, because I understand things take time to improve, but if there was a grant opportunity or if that was a direction council wanted to go in, they had somebody who was able to provide that feedback in a nice little report. So I look at things like pathways from the parking lot to the park amenities. If they have an accessible swing, is there actually a way for the person to get to the swing? Um, can they get to the accessible playground from the parking lot? If there's a pavilion, can they easily get to that pavilion from the parking lot? So I'm looking at all those different things. I'm also looking at benches, shade, washrooms, etc. So I say it's fairly comprehensive. It's done up for free. And I pass this feedback on to the municipality and they can choose to do whatever they want with it. But at least it gives them some helpful information that if they want to apply to a grant or if they want to improve a space, that they have some feedback from that health lens. So I've done this recently for Goderich in 2024. I did it for West Perth, and then in I will be doing it for Stratford in 2026. So with that being said, I think that's the end of my presentation. So I will stop sharing now. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can. And if not, I will find the answer for you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sarah. That was great. I think that the thing that I walk away from hearing that presentation is simply the importance of these partnerships that we have and of sharing information. So, with that, I'd just like to open the floor to anyone from the committee who has any questions for Sarah right now or comments about the presentation. No? Seeing, oh, there, Lori, please. Lori, I think you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Noel. Wonderful presentation, and it does follow up some of similar things that this committee does. So I'm just wondering, for this committee, it is part of the building plan that they or building permits that they bring it to the accessibility committee. How are you getting connected with the things that are happening uh, in these areas? Because it's a big area for you to have
Yeah,
keep an eye on everything.
that's a great question. So I started out small in Huron County where I received permission from Blue Water to start. And so I was able to connect in with the planning coordinator there, and she added me to their rotation list of, I sort of said, here's the things that I'm looking to comment on. And so I was added to that list. I also, in that, so that was last spring, got trained on Cloud Permit, their commenting software. And so as the year sort of had went on and I commented on lots of official plans throughout the year, I also got to know more planners. And then also Denise, who's the manager of planning, her and I have been working together over the last couple of years. She's been a great kind of mentor of helping me with all of these official plans. So anyways, I was able to send her an email in the fall to say, hey, I would love to get notifications for all of them that sort of check these boxes in Huron County. So in the fall, I was added to that kind of master list to be able to do so. And then really, if it depends on timing. So if I get a couple of weeks, then I have sort of, it usually takes me a good hour, hour and a half to do a thorough review and provide my feedback. So I just try to build that into my timeline and get those up. I would say, at least in my perspective, things have slowed down a little bit in terms of growth across the boards. I haven't received lots from Stratford this year, but it also could just be the time of year. So we'll see at the end of the year how having access to so many different municipalities, what that looks like. But the neat thing is I'm now connected into their cloud permit system. So it will just send me an email to say, this needs your attention, here's the due date, and then I can go from there. So still early days, but we'll see. Great question.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions or comments from the committee for Sarah? Sue, please.
Yes, I wanted to ask, you mentioned something about grant applications. What type of grant applications are you working with?
Well, I'm not the one who's applying to the grants. I'm just providing the letter of support for the grants. But
Oh,
so I'm aware of the Rick Hansen one, and that's where I believe the staff who support this committee might have a better knowing of what grants are sort of available and out there and which ones it makes sense to apply to. The challenge with so Stratford is one location, whereas with Huron County, it's across multiple communities. So I don't know how it works in terms of can multiple communities apply for the same grant. And if that's the case, I'm happy to provide letters of support for all those various communities who might be applying to the same grant, if that makes sense.
okay.
Lori, please.
Thank you, Chair Noel. And this is a follow-up from my previous question, I guess. Would it be helpful at all when we're doing site plan reviews if we connected with you and told you what we're working on?
Yeah, I keep
Would that be
thinking
helpful
about
to have a connection?
I have wondered about that. I will say that from what I've learned about what Perth is commenting on and their site plans, I don't spend a lot of time looking at inside a building. I'm looking more at the external aspects of it. And I feel like your team is more of the expert, especially on the inside of the building. So I don't know if there's lots of overlap because you probably will do a good general look at the outside for sure. But I'm not looking at the inside generally. I made a comment last week about the laundry facility, again, because there's going to be people who are using mobility aids in that laundry room, that they had the washers together on one side of the room and the dryers together on the other side. And so I did make the comment of put the washer and dryer beside each other and have the doors swing open so it's very easy to transfer over. So like there's the odd thing I will catch, but most of the time I'm not looking to the inside. That's definitely not my expertise, I will say. So it's a great question that we could definitely explore.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Sarah. Any other comments or questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you again, Sarah, for that great presentation and for sharing all of that information with us. With that, I am looking for a mover and a seconder, please, to receive Sarah's presentation for information. Fern and Sean, thank you. Uh, any other questions or comments before I call the question? Okay, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sarah. Enjoy the rest of this spring day.
Yes, you too. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Mm.
Okay, and now we do have a closed to the public session. And in order to go into closed, we do require a mover and a seconder. And then I will ask Susan to take us into that session. So is there anyone that would like to move? Sean moves and Maya seconds, moving into a closed session. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you. And I will ask Susan to please move us into closed.
We're good to go, Chair Noel.
Okay, thank you, Susan. So, do I report out first or the motion to open first?
Motion to open would be appropriate at this time.
Motion to open, then may I have a motion to go back into open session, please? A mover and a seconder are required. Michelle and Diane, thank you. All in favor? Okay, so we are now back in open session. Thank you. So the Huron County Accessibility Advisory Committee went into a close to the public session under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, and we discussed an item that relates to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, regarding the 2026 budget. And with that, that's my report out of closed. We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the periodic report for March 2026. And I would ask Susan to present that, if I could, please.
Thank you, Chair Noel. The report is in front of you, and I'm just going to ask, it's fairly concise. If you have any questions, I can answer those, hopefully.
Mm. Thank you, Susan. Any questions or comments on that report? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the reports. Oh, wait, so we're not moving on. We have to have a motion and accept that report for information. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Maya moves and Jamie seconds, Warden Heffer seconds the motion. Any other comments or questions? I'll call the question. All in favor, please. And that passes. Thank you. And now we move on to the Site Plan Review Committee report. I'm going to ask Susan to present that as well, please.
So we have a couple updates in there of what the committee reviewed. If you have any questions, I'm happy to hopefully answer those.
Thank you, Susan. I'll open the floor then to questions or comments. Lori, please.
Thank you, Chair Noel. I just wanted to comment on something that was fairly exciting for the Site Plan Review Committee, that we were able to do a assessment of a playground, which I believe will be the first one in Huron County that will be accessible. And so it's really nice to see that moving forward. I know Belgrave is in the planning stages of one as well. So that's pretty exciting. And I just thought I'd bring it to the other members' attention because we are moving forward with accessibility in Huron County, and that's exciting.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Lori. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I would like a mover and a seconder, please, to receive that report for information. Maya moves and Sue seconds. Any further questions or comments before I call the question? Okay, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We do not have any new business or unfinished business on our agenda. No correspondence and financial statements are not available at this time. So the only thing left on the agenda is our next meeting date. It takes place on Monday, June the 22nd at 9 o'clock a.m. And that concludes our meeting today. Thank you, everyone. Lori, are you moving the adjournment?
No, we missed committee comments, so I'd just like to make a couple of comments before we end the meeting.
Oh, my apologies. I am so sorry for that. Yes, committee member comments, please. Thank you, Lori, for bringing that to my attention. I don't know how I missed that.
So I thought I missed it, but then I realized that it wasn't in the bottom part, so I had to go back to find it. So thank you, Chair Noel. I just have a couple of comments. First of all, something that I brought up last meeting was that when the reports are sent to the municipalities, that they also be sent to the subcommittee, the site plan review committee, and that was very helpful. And I think that's a good education piece. So hopefully we can continue with that. Just a question around the payroll. And in speaking to a couple of members, they've had trouble finding their T4 slip for their income tax. I'm well aware that people that are more tech oriented than some of us with disabilities don't have any trouble with this. But I'm wondering if we could either do an education piece or an update so that those of us with disabilities aren't struggling to find that.
Susan, please.
So there are quite a few of our committees actually who are struggling with the T4 piece because I mean they're not they don't use the system that often. So what I'll do is I'll connect with that individual that handles that, and I'll send a follow-up email. They'll either be emailed or emailed. The T4s will either be mailed to you or I'll do a follow-up of some sort of how to get them to you for sure. Okay, so consider this done within this week. Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. That was
Yeah.
that was my hope, was that for the few of us that do struggle with it, if we could have it mailed or emailed would be very helpful. But I know that puts another thing on your plate, Susan. So
Happy to do it.
Thank you for clearing that up for us.
Thank you for that question, Lori, and the answer, Susan. And any other comments or, uh, uh, well, yeah, any other comments from any other members? Okay, seeing none. We will jump back down to the bottom of the agenda. And again, my apologies for missing that comments section. And I will look for a mover and a seconder to adjourn our meeting today, please. Sean and Maya, all in favor. And that carries. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's meeting, and go out and enjoy this beautiful spring day.